to our next session. I am grateful that our next speakers from the National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health are present with us here this weekend. Many of us see a global youth mental health crisis, and we see that it is of unprecedented proportions. Mental health statistics in Canada are forecasting that there will be 2 to 5 times the usual suicide rate for 2020 and 2021. Let's continue these caring conversations and action plans to ensure that those numbers don't reach these forecasts and that we continue to help to reduce the numbers of youth that have concerning mental health issues. At the start of this conference day, I spoke about the Maui Aloha Project, an eco-village initiative that I founded on the principles of democratic living, learning, and healing. We at the Maui Aloha Project agree with June and agree with so many of the other speakers this weekend that there was a lot of trauma and ancestral trauma that needs to be acknowledged and addressed. And the National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health provides mental health services and programming across Canada for students, parents, educators, and communities under the committed, experienced, and compassionate leadership of Maxine Awedella. Please take the time to read the bios of those participating in this next discussion. We are so grateful to have youth participating in this next session with Maxine. And I now give the airspace to Maxine Awedella, Alex Emmanuel, Angelique Francis, Guyleigh Johnson, Wendy Russell, and Kyrstin Dumont as they discuss topics concerning youth mental health.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and I'm hopeful that everyone can hear me. The first thing I want to talk about is just to introduce myself. I am the Volunteer Executive Director for the National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health. Our website is ymlikeMotherHconference.ca. We are a registered charity, and we're a group of educators who work with BIPOC and LGBTQ2 students from across Canada. I want to start off with why I became a teacher. The reason I became a teacher is because I suffered tremendous discrimination and anti-human rights within school. I was told by guidance counselors that I would never make it to university. In one occasion in a class, I had a young boy show me his penis, and the teacher sent me to the principal's office and said, "You know, these Black women are on the streets prostituting. I don't believe this student did that." And I was so traumatized by that because I was turned into the immoral Black woman who was prostituting on a street when I was 8 years old. And a boy had shown me his penis, and I'd never seen one in my life. I was also told that I would never make as much as my parents. My dad at that time was working as a diplomat for the United Nations. So all of these traumatic experiences that reduced my self-esteem and made me feel that I was worthless. And I was determined that I would work as an educator and try to change the education system so that other Black children, other Indigenous children, other people of color, anyone who identifies as other, would have a voice and have good self-esteem and believe that they had a future. I was incredibly traumatized during school, and everyone has their coping mechanisms. My coping mechanism was a relationship with God. Fortunately, I had a family who took me to church at the age of 13, and that was my coping mechanism, the ability to pray, which a lot of people do through meditation, the ability to believe that there was a higher power that would get me through any situation, any form of discrimination, any form of oppression, any form of abuse. We are a multi-faith organization. We service students, parents, and families who don't believe in God, who believe in a creator, who are Jewish, who are Muslim. We do not discriminate because discrimination is the basis of hatred, oppression, and everything that is wrong with our society. So we have an open door, and we believe that everyone is welcome.
Something went wrong. Please try again.
When I speak about youth mental health plans, I know that sounds very formal, but it is not formal in respect with the way it was taken. So many people who have mental health illnesses as adults say that these mental health challenges started between the age of 10 and 17, and they were never addressed. They weren't given the opportunity for counseling. They weren't given the opportunity for healing. They weren't given the opportunity to actually speak to anyone about the trauma they had experienced. So they carried it into adulthood, much like June talked about with Sir John A. Macdonald. And when trauma and oppression and pain and discrimination and hatred that is leveled at you through so many different sources is left unhealed and undiscussed and unresolved, it inhibits your success. It inhibits the possibility of a full life. It inhibits positive, healthy relationships with others. And when I talk about a youth mental health plan, I'm not talking about a formal educational plan where we force students to receive counseling. I'm talking about giving students a safe place to express their trauma, to express what it feels like, even if I'm not a BIPOC or LGBTQ2 student, what it feels like to be in a classroom where other people are being oppressed, what it feels like to witness systemic discrimination, what it feels like to witness anti-human rights. That's what we're talking about. It impacts everyone, regardless of your race, your culture, your sex, or your orientation. We are all impacted by hatred. So when I talk about these youth mental health plans, I'm talking about the fact that we have to recognize that IEPs aren't enough. Maybe I'm not successful in school because of the trauma and the oppression. Maybe I'm not successful in school because we're living on the street, because my mother couldn't get a job as a Black woman, because there is discrimination in employment. Maybe I'm living on the street with my family because my mother can't get housing, because people don't want to rent to someone of a specific ethnicity. Maybe I'm living in the street because my father was fired because of systemic discrimination. It impacts every single aspect of your life, from your housing to your employment, to your parents, to the security of a safe home. And then I have to go to school and I have to learn. And because I'm traumatized and I'm jittery, and maybe I'm running around the classroom and maybe I haven't had breakfast, you say I'm ADHD or I'm ADD and I need an IEP. Well, maybe if you sat with me and you allowed me to talk about my trauma, maybe if you sat with me and you allowed me to have counseling and heal, maybe if you sat with me and said, can we help your mom find housing? Can we help your dad find employment? Can we refer your family to this association? And that's why when someone walks in to the National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health, and if you go to our website, we have comprehensive programming. We advocate for the students in the school when parents can't. We talk to teachers and principals and we educate them about the unique experience of every single child. And we open their eyes to what is going on in that child's life that may impact their learning and be limiting their possibility for success and their possibility for freedom. We reach out to their parents. What is going on in your family? How can we help? Can we help you find housing? Can we help you find employment? What do you need? Can we educate you? Can we help you with training? We have a full student family advocacy program. And what I want to talk to you about is we cannot look at that child in a box and say this child is different and it's their color, it's their race, it's because they're LGBTQ2. What is happening outside of that child, in their family, in their community, in their household? We have to look at that. So when I talk about youth mental health plans, that may sound very clinical and very precise, but it is about compassionate learning, compassionate education, compassionate healing, so student success can take place. That's what it's about. And as much as I respect the idea that we can leave school, that is really not an option for BIPOC students. And if it is an option, we often end up homeless on the street because we cannot get a job. Because of our skin color, we may not be able to get a job at the grocery store. But if I'm Caucasian and I have white skin and I have that white privilege that Jim Flannery talked about, it's more of an option for me to leave school because I will be hired at that grocery store. I will be rented out that room in that building. So we have to understand that the experience of BIPOC and LGBTQ2 students is different and it's unique. And we need your help to understand that first and foremost. And we need your help that when you talk about education and unschooling, that we are at the table, but you understand that being at that table looks very different for us, very different. And the national collaboration, we want to partner with you. We want a real and authentic collaboration that says, just the way June talked about Richard, we need to educate you. We need to get rid of years of miseducation and biases that we all have, including myself, unconscious biases about my own race and other races, because I have been colonialized within a colonialized system, and not just system, but systems. So I need you at the table, understanding me. We need to address your miseducation, my miseducation, and we need to start again from scratch in a compassionate, authentic, safe place. What I'm going to do now is next I'm going to talk about one of our big projects that we're so proud of. And when I first talked to June about this project, it was called Anti-Racism Workshops. And June said to me, because she is one of my most esteemed and respected mentors, I thank God for June Gervan. I thank you, June. She said to me, it's not anti-racism, Maxine, or we should try to use the word anti-human rights, because then it's inclusive and everyone is included and everyone understands anti-human rights, what it's like to have your basic human rights taken away from you. So the National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health offers an anti-human rights workshop, anti-systemic discrimination workshop, whose goal is to neutralize classrooms across Canada so that learning can take place. If I teach you about the things that I experienced in school, the things that LGBTQ2 students are experiencing in school, Indigenous students, Muslim students, etc., then we you need to mute because it's echoing. Then we can then start to equalize learning and make success possible for all students. So right now we're dealing with, we're providing anti-human rights and anti-systemic discrimination workshops to over 2 million students across Canada virtually. We go through an intake process when they register, and it's for teachers and educators and staff, and they neutralize the classroom so that learning can take place. And then we have a research piece, which is provided by someone named Dumont, who's also on this call, that measures is the education levels and the education success rates of BIPOC LGBTQ2 students increasing when the classrooms are neutralized and free of discrimination? Is that making learning possible and our success rates increasing? So I want to talk to you about that. And if you have any questions, I'll take your questions at the end, because right now I'm going to go to Wendy, who will talk about some additional programming that we offer at NCYMH, because we believe that arts offer a safe space to students facing mental health challenges, and arts is an exceptional unifier for students who are facing mental health challenges. They can express themselves, they can feel like they belong, they can collaborate, they can have voice, and they can relieve themselves of some of the stress and anxiety that is inherent within our education systems today. So Wendy Russell, I will pass the microphone to you.
Thank you so much, Maxine. Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. I'm the last minute addition here. Maxine asked me to co-host today, so I'm thrilled to be here. I am a volunteer writer for the blog that Maxine is putting together for the website. And I'm also a mentor to one of National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health volunteers. His name is Alex. You're going to meet him shortly. And I'm also a board member. So I'm excited to be asked to have a seat on the board. My first meeting's in December. So I'm new here. I'm new to all of this, but I'm very excited to be part of this discussion. You know, for me, because we're obviously talking about the topic of mental health. For me, my experience obviously was quite different in the way that mental health, I experienced it in my life. I experienced a very traumatizing divorce of my parents. I got moved to the other side of the country, and in a very, important time in our lives. It is very, an age that, we already should have our friends and a safe place to feel like we belong. I was not. My sister and I were thrown into a new school and very quickly sort of became the target of being the new girl and being nobody wants to be the new girl's friend. So that was the beginning of what I had experienced that was new to me. Up until that point, thought everything was great, life was grand, all of those things. And I, with the bullying, I then had turned to food for comfort. And it then blew into a full eating disorder. And I was creative all my life too, but what I realized was that the trauma was so much for me that I wasn't able to be creative during school. I quit everything. I had all intentions of, ending up on Broadway at some point. So I quit singing and dancing and acting. All of those things seemed very unsafe for me. I was getting beaten up at school and challenged to fights and spit at and called all the names. And so all of that was very unsafe for me. So I had left everything that I loved doing, including playing the guitar and the piano, and I just sort of hid for a long time. So it wasn't until my 20s that I realized that I had now had this full-blown eating disorder and was challenged with this, this thing in my life. And until there was an amazing book that I read called When Food is Love by Janine Roth. If anybody knows Janine Roth's writing, her most recent book, and she was on Oprah. She wrote Women, Food, and God, but I was introduced to her long before she had her Oprah days. And that book, opened my eyes to realizing that I was a compulsive overeater. And I was able to switch my thinking from, rather than punishing myself with food, I was then going to, improve my mental health and take my mental health into my own hands by getting back to being creative and making gifts for my friends and family and creating pieces of art for my home and, all of the creative things that I filled my life with. So my mission on this planet is to inspire and educate and teach kids to use their creativity and take it into their adulthood, because for me, it's been incredibly healing. It's been what saved my life. And to have the opportunity to mentor students along the way has been such a gift. So that's me. I'm going to now connect with this amazing student that I've been mentoring through the National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health. His name is Alex. And Alex, are you in with us now?
Yeah.
Are you around?
Yeah,
Okay, awesome. So welcome, Alex. Alex is also a volunteer with the National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health. I love what you do for us. You research articles and documents and all the things you can get your hands on in terms of mental health and how to improve that for youth. And then you report back to the organization to say, hey, listen, this is going to work or this isn't going to work, and this is why. And so I think being able to give your voice to this organization and explain to us, adults who aren't youth anymore and not in that position to know what you need right now. It is so important. And you're an incredible artist. Alex goes to a full-time art high school, which is kind of what I always wanted to do when I was in school. I wish it's that like Fame movie, so he's doing that, and he's an artist, and he created the National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health logo a few years ago. And now you're working on the latest logo for them, a BIPOC logo. So we're looking forward to seeing that. He's diligently working his creative genius on that. So anyways, everybody, welcome Alex. Hello, hello, happy Sunday. Hi. Listen, let's talk about mental health and anti-human rights in school. I want to know for you, because you and I haven't had this conversation yet. Have you ever experienced anti-human rights in school, and how did it make you feel? How did it affect your mental health?
Yeah, I've experienced anti-human rights in school before. It what I guess had to do with mainly a lot of discrimination towards like LGBT students when I attended a Catholic school. The environment was very toxic of not only the students but the teachers as well. I know there was one very like uncomfortable experience in class where the teacher, my English teacher, held a debate over whether I guess LGBT people deserved to exist in the world, or if it was okay. And it was a very like negative environment that was being like taught to all the students, where basically you can devil's advocate someone's identity. And like it was just very hard to be in that situation. Yeah, so that was definitely an experience I remember very vividly.
Wow.
But I left that school because it was starting to have a very negative impact on my mental health and how I saw myself, and my self-confidence and all of that. So I had to get out of there. But that was a bit of my experience with that.
How long did it take you to leave school after you experienced that? I'm curious.
Um, I went to that school for 2 years. It was definitely worse after I came out around 8th grade, and then I left school right after that. Um, but yeah, I left immediately, like the year after, I think, once I finished grade 8.
Gotcha. And so how did you cope? What were your mental health strategies? What did you do? I mean, obviously, other than the exit was probably a huge part of that, leaving school, that school.
I did not cope well at all. I really was dealing with a lot of self-hate at the time, so a lot of my coping mechanisms were very, very negative, because I didn't view myself, like I didn't accept myself at all. So I would definitely, a lot of my coping mechanisms were a lot of like self-harm things that I was doing at the time, um, to kind of just numb myself to everything, which, yeah, that was what I did.
Can I, one of the things that I wanted to say was at that time, Alex, if you look at the logo for ymhconference.ca, it is a girl with a rainbow tear. And Alex was able to communicate some of the distress and trauma and anti-human rights that Alex was experiencing at school through art, through the creation of this logo showing this girl crying this rainbow tear, because Alex felt unaccepted and very traumatized and oppressed, and learning was virtually impossible in such a toxic environment. So Wendy, you can continue.
Thanks, Maxine. I guess my next question for you would be then, what changes would have helped you when you were being discriminated against, or, when you were feeling like, there's something definitely wrong here? What do you wish you had seen that would have been helpful for you?
I wish I would have seen more support from teachers. I wish that um like the teachers like really like actually like made an effort in terms of making the classroom like a safe environment, like a tolerant environment. I would have liked to see that a lot more. um and I would also have liked to see, because I know when I left that school and I moved to a different school, it was very, very different. I would see like, I don't know how to like explain it, but like, I guess not posters, Zoe, but like pride stickers and like pride like sort of dedicated things around the school, whether it was like on doors, or there was like I forget what it's called, but like sometimes like things are like showcased like behind like glass and stuff like that. So there will be like pride flags, and like very like it was a very LGBT friendly like space like in the school itself, and I never saw anything like that in my other school at all. So it was very like the second like you walk in the school, like, okay, like I'm acknowledged here. So that was also a help. I think that was also a bit helpful, or would be, at least in my experience.
Yes. And what can you suggest now? I know you've been doing incredible research for us, and with all your, hours spent on researching what works and what doesn't, what changes do you want to see, that what you'd like to, that could help other boys and girls that are in school now, that might help, that might change things?
Um,
Your
I
last one is a great example, but if you have any other suggestions.
Yeah. I think more organizations like this one is definitely like crucial. Like people like actually working to want to like change things and wanting to reach out to like youth and like actually make changes. Like I said, would is helpful. I think to have like resources out there that are interested in pursuing change.
Awesome. Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you, Alex, so much. I'm going to send it back to Maxine. I think we've got a few more
Yes.
guests that we'd love to introduce to everybody.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Alex, thank you so much. Next, I'm going to call on Isabel Norris, who works with our youth, just to talk about some of the stats around youth mental health and some of the things that we're doing. What I do want to mention is employment. One of the things that we saw in terms of BIPOC and LGBTQ2 youth is that the lack of employment. And if you're looking at socioeconomic levels, being able to offer students like Alex, who is incredibly talented and didn't have a voice, the opportunity for employment, the opportunity to express his art and enhance his talents and have advocates who believe in him is essential to student success. Next, Alex, thank you so much. Next, we'll have Isabel Norris.
Hi, I'm Isabel. Thanks for having me. I'm working with youth, and what I want to say is, well, even if students have not experienced mental illnesses, it is very likely that they know someone who has. So consider the following statistics to get an idea of just how widespread the effects of mental health illness are in society among young people in particular. So globally, statistical facts from the United Nations World Health Organization and from September 28th in 2020 on adolescents' mental health states. So that says 1 in 6 people are aged 10 to 19 years. Mental health conditions account for 16% of the global burden of disease and injury in people aged 10 to 19 years old. Half of mental health conditions start by 14 years of age, but most cases are undetected and untreated. Globally, depression is one of the leading causes of illness and disability among adolescents. Suicide is the third leading cause of death in 15 to 19-year-olds. The consequences of not addressing adolescent mental health conditions extend to adulthood, and impairing both physical and mental health and limiting opportunities to lead fulfilling lives as an adult, obviously. And so from a Canadian perspective, according to the Center of Addiction and Mental Health, in any given year, 1 in 5 Canadians experiences a mental illness or addiction problem. By the time Canadians reach about, I think it was 40 years old of age, 1 in 2 have had a mental illness. 70% of mental health problems have their onset during childhood or adolescence, and young people aged 15 to 24 years old are more likely to experience mental illness and or substance use or disorders than any other age group. Another thing is that 34% of Ontario high school students indicate a moderate to serious level of psychological distress. So symptoms are anxiety, depression, lots and lots and lots. 14% indicate a serious level of psychological distress. From an equity lens, a report titled A Statistical Report on the State of Indigenous Mental Health in Canada states in Indigenous communities, suicide is the leading cause of death for young people aged 10 to 29. The report cites statistics in Canada, which states that suicide rates among First Nations youth are 5 to 7 times that of non-Indigenous youth, depending on the location and affiliation, with some of the worst suicide rates in Canada being amongst Inuit youth, who are 11 times more likely to commit suicide than the national average. A recent Statistics Canada report released on June 23rd in 2020, titled Indigenous People and Mental Health During the COVID-19 Pandemic, states 6 in 10 Indigenous participants report that their mental health has worsened since the onset of physical distancing. Among Indigenous crowdsourced participants, 38% reported fair or poor mental health. 32% reported good mental health, and 31% reported excellent or very good mental health. When asked how their mental health has changed since physical distancing began, 60% of Indigenous participants indicated that their mental health has become somewhat worse or much worse. So Black individuals are more likely to qualify as low income, experience unemployment, and be uninsured. Negative attitudes towards the healthcare system reduces Black individuals' willingness to seek and receive care. Mental health issues are not openly discussed in the Black community, and thus individuals struggle silently. Treatment providers are less likely to be Black, and many are not educated on Black culture and Black struggles. So their proposed solution is a network of culturally responsive care providers, affordable and accessible mental health services. To increase awareness and education of mental health issues and create space for open dialogue, to collaborate with community agencies and partners to address mental health issues that impact recidivism, to offer diagnosis and assessment at early onset for Black children at risk of ADHD, ODD, and other cognitive deficits. That being said, the National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health understands schools provide an ideal environment and natural opportunities to address issues of mental health and illness. Schools are well positioned to be at the vanguard of public health strategies designed to prevent and detect mental health disorders among young people. Educators can play an important role by delivering accurate, comprehensive information and by challenging the stereotypes about mental illness held by the general community. Mental health and illness are issues that are urgent and needs to be addressed immediately. We also believe the OCDSB cannot address this alone. In the spirit of reconciliation and the OCDSB commitment to the International Decade for People of African Descent proclaimed by the United Nations, the National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health is looking forward to working closely with the OCDSB for further collaborate on an action plan that will assist the OCDSB in reaching its goal of student success and well-being for all.
Yes, I just wanted to add to those statistics and to what Isabel has shared on the portal now, that collaboration is incredibly critical and important to student success, because We all bring a different lens and a different perspective and different skills to the table. And based on those statistics that Isabel shared with you, this is a critical time, and mental health challenges affect everyone. And we need to take this seriously when we talk about education and when we talk about schools, and not just with the OCDSB. Our anti-human rights workshops, which go with the goal to neutralize learning environments. We have homeschool parents, we have private schools, public schools, anyone who is interested in providing children with a comprehensive, unifying, neutralized learning environment that allows success to take place. We collaborate with them. On that note, I'm going to turn next to Kyrstin, who is an Indigenous student, who will share with you some of her mental health challenges within the school system because of anti-human rights experiences. And after Kyrstin, we'll hear from Diako Foku, who is leading some of our research, because without research and data, it is impossible to make the type of pervasive changes we are hoping to make that will lead to student success. So Kyrstin, are you there?
Hi, yes, I am.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll let you decide the framework and the theme and what you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to say thank you for having me here today, and thank you for asking me to be a part of this panel. I truly feel honored to be one of the speakers today. So I guess what I'll get into as we're speaking about mental health and mental wellness, especially within the school systems. When I was in the 9th grade, I would say I went to my first Catholic high school. And being an Indigenous person and a person that struggled with learning disabilities, I had many peers that would make fun of me because of these things, and it was very draining on my mental health. I one day decided to reach out to one of my school counselors about these issues that I was facing and just to have somebody to talk to. And that was the very first time where I didn't feel appreciated or like she really wanted to hear what was going on within my life. When I went up to this counselor, she told me specifically, and I'm going to quote exactly what she said, "This is not where you come to talk about your problems." And that really took me aback because I was so used to going to teachers or going to counselors to talk about my issues and the issues that I face within the school systems. I was very confused as to why somebody that's called a counselor wasn't there to counsel me. And then she proceeded to say that I should only contact her or make an appointment with her if I had issues that have to do with my academic achievements. And what she really didn't realize is that my mental health had everything to do with my academic achievements. Because if I'm not feeling accepted by my own school or my own peers, why would that make me want to flourish in a system that was built to destroy me? And when I say that, I mean the fact that the school system, the education system was built to destroy people that weren't like them. It was built to destroy Indigenous folks, Black folks, because they wanted to teach us a westernized education. They wanted to teach us a colonized education. And it's things like that that really took me aback because I was going to Catholic schools before this. I went to Catholic elementary schools. I went to public elementary schools, and I was always able to find somebody that was able to speak to me about the issues that I was facing within the school board or within my school itself. So having this counselor say these things to me definitely made me think about what kind of school system and that I wanted to be a part of. And I didn't want to be a part of a school system that was built to think of only academic issues instead of the issues that our people face day to day. And, you know, so many non-Indigenous or non-Black people face these issues too. They deal with anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, and so many other mental health issues. And for the school system to not take that into account and think that that doesn't revolve around how someone's academic achievements, you know, revolve around is foolish. Because for myself, I had strayed away from school so much because of the fact that my anxiety and my depression were leading me into a hole that made me not feel accepted. And by not feeling accepted, I didn't want to attend a school that didn't accept me. And I know that there's peers that I've gone to school with who feel the exact same way. They would skip school or skip certain classes because they didn't feel accepted by their teachers, their peers, their principals. And I think that, you know, this is a really great panel to be a part of because I'm able to hear every single person's issues that they faced, their problems, and the statistics that are currently being recorded. You know, I went to a school where it was actually a public school where if a person didn't have something to eat, they could go into the cafeteria and get a free soup, um, which is amazing. But what happens when that child goes home and doesn't have anything to eat? What happens when that child goes home to some place that's violent? What happens when a child goes home and doesn't feel accepted by their own family? The fact that the schools don't accept them and make it an unsafe space for children make their anxiety and their depression 10 times higher and 10 times more dangerous. It's been said time and time again that you can't make a fish climb a tree. You can't put a monkey and a fish in the same category. You can't give them the same lessons. And I think that's really important to take into a fact because so many kids learn differently and so many kids deal with different things. But when it comes to the way that the school operates, they definitely need to be more compassionate and more understanding to what people face on a day-to-day basis. You know, if they're failing in life or their family makes them believe that they're not going to account to anything, and then the school puts that in their own heads as well, kids are going to be living on the streets, kids are going to go into drug addiction, kids are going to go into things that they feel will make themselves feel better, whether it's for a second, a year, or a week, you know. And I myself have struggled with addiction issues. I have been told by my peers and my principal that there are reasons why people may think that I am selling my own body. And as an Indigenous woman, you know, that's very detrimental on my brain. I've heard so many missing and murdered Indigenous women statistics, so many issues that have been going on. And then when somebody will say that because of the way I hold myself as a 17-year-old woman, and I am now 20 years old, that people might see me in a sexualized way. And the toll that that took on my brain, my mental health, and the way that I acted afterwards was tremendous. You know, I made sure that I never wore tight clothes to school. I made sure that there would be no reason for these people to make issues that I deal with 10 times greater, such as my depression, such as my anxiety. People don't realize how words can make something so much worse. And there's so many words that people don't even take into consideration that are very, very trying and tiring on the female brain. You know, I spoke about this a bit on Friday as well, about my teacher saying that the way I hold myself, that I'm too flirty, this, that, and the next thing. And that was my teacher's excuse for peers calling me a sexualized slur. And from as little as I can remember, for as young as I can remember, I've always dealt with depression and anxiety because of people like that, because of people that weren't accepting of who I am and the way that I hold myself. I'm now 20 years old and I've never been more confident in my life to be able to speak on issues that affect myself and my community. But at the same time, just because I'm confident doesn't mean that I don't struggle with issues just as all of my other peers do. I was very fortunate to attend a high school that is revolved around First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. But I have very big issues with sleeping outside of my own home. I've been living on my own and with my partner since I was 17 years old. So my school decided to go on a overnight vacation, or overnight retreat, as they called it. And I had, as soon as it started getting dark out, I had very large anxiety. My anxiety was through the roof, and I wasn't able to cope with sleeping outside of my own home. I expressed this to my teachers, and I expressed my concerns and me wanting to go home. And I explained that I would order my own transportation, whether it be an Uber, a Lyft, a cab, whatever the case may be, that I would make sure that I got myself home. And my teachers, who there were about 2 or 3 of them there at the time, they all advised me to stay, and they really looked down at me because of the fact that I didn't feel comfortable staying in a place that wasn't my own house. Um, so later that day, I did end up leaving, but before I left, my teacher said, you know, I really don't understand what you're going through because I've never gone through it myself. And that really makes me think, you know, there's so many things that even I don't deal with that others do, but it doesn't mean that you should belittle someone just because you don't feel the same way that they do or think that the same things that they do. Every person's feelings are valid, every person's opinions are valid. And the fact that people are going to look down upon you or think that what you're feeling is wrong is incorrect. And when they do that, it makes your anxiety or your depression 10 times higher because you're thinking to yourself, should I be feeling like this? Should I be worried about staying out of my own house? Should I be worried about the way that I'm currently feeling? And that makes you question your own feelings. And that's never something that you should be doing. You know, I've always gone with my gut instinct. I live in an area, or I used to live in an area where the crime rates were really high. Prostitution rates were extremely high. I'd go out to the store and people would assume that I was selling my body, even just wearing a baggy sweater and some jogging pants, and, you know, things like that. And when you grow up in a neighborhood or a part of a city that, you know, has a certain, I guess, reputation, you really start to question where you belong or if you belong in at all, you know. And when you grow up in a neighborhood that is not the friendliest, not child safe, and then you go to a school which is supposed to be friendly and child safe but isn't to people that look like me or look like you, it becomes extremely hard on people's mental health and mental well-being, because you start to wonder, you know, what can I do to better my life? What can I do to make sure that I don't fall through the cracks of colonial mainstream education? And still, I question that every single day. Even me being 20 years old, I'm still trying to fight to get my high school diploma. I was very lucky to be able to get a job within Service Canada, which I currently work full time while trying to finish my diploma. It's been said so many times that these systems, these education systems were really meant to destroy us. And I never really believed that until I got older and started to realize that so many people who look like me have fallen through the cracks. And it makes me think of residential schools sometimes, because those schools were built so that they could beat the Indian out of us, so that we could learn how to be a westernized person. And the more I think of colonial mainstream education, it definitely wraps around that, because there has never been a class where I was able to learn my own language. There has never been a class where I was able to learn my own art form. And that itself is so daunting on the Indigenous mind, the BIPOC mind, because how are you supposed to learn about your own people if your school isn't even teaching that? We only have so many days throughout the week, such as the weekends, where we're able to learn about ourselves if we take the time to do that. But they teach, westernized geography, westernized history, but they never teach history about Indigenous folks. When I was in the 9th or 10th grade, I was going to a public school, and my non-Indigenous teacher thought it would be a great idea to teach us about my people by using the movie Avatar. And, a lot of non-Indigenous people don't understand that that's the wrong way to teach us about our own history. That's the wrong way to teach us about Indigenous history, because the more that you do that, the more that people who have never learned about the culture think that it's a fantasy, think that it's almost like a Disney movie, such as Pocahontas. And there's so much more to Indigenous folks than the Avatar or the Pocahontas movies. And when you start portraying that in history classes, whenever you do talk about Indigenous identity, it makes my peers and peers in general look down upon you. They look at me like I had blue skin and a tail. They looked at me like my braids were somehow connected to everything around me, which, my hair is connected to Mother Earth 100%. My feet belong to the ground. But when you coincide it as a movie, as something that people created, then they look at you like you're just another character within their own world. And that's where the problem starts to exist. And when you teach youth and when you teach people my age about these things, you really are teaching racism. You really are teaching kids how to be just ignorant, because they think that what they learned in school is correct, instead of going out and learning their own history, or going out and researching these things on their own to fully understand what Indigenous people are and how Indigenous people have become who they are. I mentioned this on Friday, how there's so many things that have been built and put within my path to destroy me. But even though I deal with anxiety, I deal with depression, that's never going to stop me from speaking my truth. That's never going to stop me from coming on to conference calls such as these, because of the fact that if I'm not going to do it, who will?
Yes.
And I think it's really important to remind youth, especially BIPOC youth, that, if we continue to hide in our shells, if we continue to be afraid of the world that was meant to destroy us, that they will never learn how resilient we really are. They will never learn how strong and powerful we have become throughout all of these obstacles that we've been
That's
facing.
correct. That's correct. Kyrstin, I just want to thank you so much for joining the panel. And because of this conference, Kyrstin, we've asked Kyrstin to join our committee for the BIPOC LGBTQ2 Youth Mental Health Conference that we'll be having in March. So I thank this conference for introducing us to Kyrstin. Kyrstin, you have an incredible place in our organization, National Collaboration for Youth Mental Health. We value you, we respect you, we welcome you, and we're so excited to be working with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. We're going to be finishing up a little bit late because we started late. Our session started at 12:25. So I'm going to have Dieudonné, who is our research expert, speak for 3 minutes. I will finish up and then we'll take some questions. So as everyone knows, it's very important to measure what's happening with students now, to collect data, to analyze the data, and to recommend changes if we are going to see a change and if we are going to actually be change makers within student success and learning. So Dieudonné, are you with us?
Yeah, I am. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Thank you very much for having me. You know, it is always a challenge to come last as in a panel because people have already said what has to be said, and I just want to thank everybody who has been before me. As Maxine said, and as Kyrstin said, and Alex and Wendy and Isabella, you know, they talked about the things that affect them and impact their progress. Really, what we have to do is to make sure that all these situations, all these challenges that we encountering, that we measure them, quantify them, so that we can have information about what is working for us and what is not working for us. So we will never be able to address a problem if we don't have accurate information, accurate data about what we're experiencing. And one of the things that we set out to do within the National Collaboration for Mental Health is to collect information about all the activity that we're doing, analyze that information, and take educated decision and help policymaker, revise either the curriculum or having a neutralized learning environment. This is what we set out to do within the research, measurement, and insight committee. And I think it is clear for everybody that statistics, data, is the basic of engaging with people, because sometimes it's difficult to talk to a teacher or to talk to policymaker on a compassionate level. But when we come out and show the data, which is underlying what we're saying, and show the consequences through data, they will even understand better what impact all these activities is having on towards eradicating problems that Black and Indigenous people are facing. So I want to leave it there and give the word to Maxine to close. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Dieudonné. So we are going to hear from June. What I want to say first and foremost is that at NCYMH, we are national, and we really believe in setting high standards and cultures for every form of schooling, every form of education, not just public, but private, homeschooling, unschooling. Every educational model needs to have a neutralized learning environment. That means that we as educators, we need to deal with our miseducation, we need to neutralize the way we teach, what we teach, how we engage, and we need to change our lens to an equity lens. We have to have high standards and high cultures within education that address the mental health challenges that our miseducation present to our students, vulnerable students. We need to look at the values and beliefs within our education and our systems, and we need to strongly advocate for student achievement and do whatever it takes to make that student achievement possible. What I want to say is many times I've been asked, what is your experience? How can you do this? I've had people who don't know me say to me, are you Black? Are you Indigenous? Do you have lived experience? I do have lived experience. I am a Black teacher who has experienced a lifetime of anti-human rights from every single possible system. And I collaborate with others. I do not have a lens that judges people based on race, culture, or orientation. That's why we are a BIPOC, LGBTQ2 collaborative organization. We have to be able to understand that the opportunity, the freedom to have an education is a human right. And we have to address the mental health, psychological piece to education in order for education to take place. I invite everyone to please become involved in our equity, inclusion, and anti-human rights workshops every week, which are geared to neutralize learning environments. I welcome you to visit our website, ymhconference.ca, and I welcome you to please join the committee and the panel for our BIPOC Youth Mental Health Conference in March. You've heard from students like Alex and Kyrstin, who are strong and who have been given opportunities to succeed. We need to, as educators, continue to use our skills, our training, and our lived experience, and our networks to really advocate for children and youth, because we are responsible for their success. Lastly, I would like to hear from June. Thank you so much, and I will take questions.
Gianna spoke earlier on in the chat and says, when one speaks about looking at meals and housing behind ADHD and poverty and marginalization behind mental health issues, what do the speakers feel about the inherent coerciveness of our current schooling approach? The fact that ADHD can be a response to boredom and depression can be a response to feeling incompetent or having no space to explore one's own interests. How much do you feel that making education more consent-based and child-friendly might itself positively impact mental health for students across the board?
That's such an excellent question. Thank you so much for that, Gianna. What I want to say is that when I think about children and when I think about learning, I often think about SPLICE, which is social, psychological, intellectual, cognitive, and emotional. And when I think about mental health, I think about all of those things together, and they're necessary for learning to take place. So definitely we need to look at children's emotional state when they come to our schools and during the day. Definitely we have to look at psychologically what's going on when I'm sitting in a classroom and I am an LGBTQ2 youth and someone is saying that that should not be allowed. How does that affect me psychologically? I have to look at the intellectual piece. Whenever I face discrimination, I can tell you of some horrible experiences that basically, would make me go home and lie in bed for 2 hours and find the courage to get out of bed again and face that world of oppression, or to go back to a classroom where I was called the N-word the day before, or to have to go back to a classroom where a boy has shown me his penis as an 8-year-old girl, and I'm being told that I'm like the other Black prostitutes on the street because I go to the teacher and I say, this boy showed me his penis, and I'm crying and I'm traumatized, and I become sexualized because of the color of my skin. Let's talk about those things. Those things affect learning. And a lot of the time when kids are demonstrating signs of ADHD and ADD, and we drug them, they are really just showing signs of trauma that inhibit learning and inhibit success. So you are absolutely right. We have to look at the whole child. And I encourage everyone, regardless of your race, your culture, your socioeconomic background, please collaborate with us and join this fight to eliminate anti-human rights and discrimination that are stopping success for everyone. The George Floyd incident was so triggering and traumatic for every single person across the world. We experience that almost every single minute. And a child like Alex and Kyrstin experience it every day. We can't just talk anymore. We can't turn a blind eye. We have to be committed to neutralizing our learning environments. Gianna, that was a brilliant question. Thank you.
I do have a question. Thank you, Maxine and Dieudonné and Kyrstin, for your speaking. It's very profound for me. And I appreciate that you're speaking about teaching and learning as an emotional process all day long. In speaking about data, can you speak more about how qualitative versus quantitative data can help us to more understand the impacts of these types of schooling that you're speaking about?
Yes, I will answer some of that. And then Dieudonné, if you feel comfortable adding something, that would be great. I believe that we have to use measurements to communicate the benefit of anti-human rights and anti-systemic discrimination in all learning environments. We have to prove the connection between underrepresented communities with Black children and youth and BIPOC children and youth and their school experience. We also need to measure, if I am a Caucasian student who is also witnessing somebody being oppressed and treated differently, how does it also impact my learning when that anti-human rights behavior is neutralized? If I am a teacher and I am unknowingly, through unconscious bias, creating a biased, oppressive environment, I need to also be subject to uneducating those biases so that when my students who are also learning that anti-human rights messaging and workshops and knowledge, when they come back to the classroom, they don't go back to zero. It has to be a holistic effort with educators, students, parents, communities, government agencies. And it starts from birth because there's a lot of data that shows that schools are channeling BIPOC children and youth into children's aid services. And within those children aid services, they are never recovering from trauma. And they are unable to go on to secondary education, and they're unable to go on to successful careers. So we need to show those connections. We also need to provide parents, students, and communities with the knowledge to advocate at the grassroots levels for BIPOC students. We need to also provide leadership and policy implementation that impact student education and learning. We need to demonstrate and engage educators to pledge 100% the way that June is advocating. So 100% commitment to BIPOC and LGBTQ2 children and youth. We need to allocate resources and make budgetary decisions to include anti-human rights and anti-systemic racism workshops within all learning environments, including unschooling, homeschooling, everything. We need to create a revolution that is focused on neutralizing our learning environment and committing to the future success of future generations. Dieudonné, do you have anything to add to that question? Okay, we have another question. Maybe Dieudonné has left.
No, I haven't left, but anyway,
sorry.
let's take the question, and I will wrap it up whether it answer whether Rita felt that it answer hers. Please go ahead. Gary.
Rita, do you feel that that answered your question?
So as a social emotional educator in a public environment, it's the tenet of our school to be attentive to and educate about the social emotional being of the person in their home environment, in their school environment. And we're always talking about collecting quantitative data, testing, numbers. And so much of what we're doing in these conferences is the dialect, the opposite of that. So, and even Kyrstin and the other youth in this forum here, what would it be like for you to have a voice to talk about how you feel and to be able to write about it instead of filling in a bubble? That's what I mean. And when we talk about qualitative data, how are you feeling? What does it look like, sound like, feel like to be learning in your environment?
Yeah. Well, this is really an important aspect of Rita. So you say there's certain things that we can measure, which is numbers that comes up. But as you know, the technology is advanced, and we can also measure, let's say, qualitative aspect of the learning. So to make it clear, take sentiment analysis, right? How do you measure whether after the student or parent follow a specific course, if their sentiment, for example, has improved, right? We have specific scientific methodology to capture those sentiment, right? So we will also be focusing on these aspects as well. And this is going to be the, the quantitative aspect of these measurements. So you follow the course, how does your sentiment has improved after that? You follow the workshop, and then how is it impacting your success in general? How is it improving your self-esteem? So these are the aspects that we will also measure. So we're not going to focus only on the, on the quantitative aspect. Did you pass your subject? Did you, what is the total grade at the end, right? So I agree with you, is the total package that we have to look at. And of course, I don't want to go too technical. So you have an array of tooling ranging from machine learning, which can extract the sentiment based on different answer type, to to simple psychological testing to assess whether a person is feeling right. These are the things that we are going to be doing research on, collecting data, and also gaining insight and educate policymaker, student, policymaker, parent, and everybody involved in order to improve the mental health of the student. And like you mentioned, Kyrstin says something in her statement that, you go to a counselor, she's saying, well, this is not the environment, it affects her sentiment, right? So we have to capture that in our data gathering session. We need to capture that. And this is nothing to do with numbers of cyber. This is affected. We capture that and then we will address it, right? So I think for now, I'm going to leave it as it now so that we can take another question.
Well, if
yeah.
I could interrupt for a second, and I hate to do this at this point, but I want to respect the other speakers and the schedule that we have because they have some other engagements. This is and sometimes conferences run late, and we ran late in the session because this is a very important discussion. This is a central discussion for about well-being, the holistic well-being, you know, really looking at the social, emotional person, the spiritual person, the spiritual children with all of our histories and our ancestral histories. I invite this conversation to be continued in the last session for today because there's so much important pieces being said here. I hope, Maxine, that you and all of the people who spoke in this session, Alex, Angelique, Wendy, Kyrstin, and Donnie, I hope that you will come and to the final session today, which is supposed to be scheduled at 3. It will probably be more like 3:30 with Heather and Cam. And also in various other spaces that we could continue talking about it, and we can suggest that in the next little bit. I
Yes.
apologize, though. I do have
Yes.
to introduce the next speakers.
Yes. Stephanie, could I just, I will definitely commit to being back at 3:30. I also wanted to invite people to please visit our website at ymhconference.ca, and also please be part of our BIPOC Youth Mental Health Conference in March. We need committee members. Please come on board, everyone. Let's collaborate. Let's join forces and really make a difference for children and youth. Thank you so much, Richard and June and Stephanie and all of you. And we'll be back at 3:30. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Maxine, for heading such an important discussion and for all of the people who contributed to that conversation. And we look forward to continuing it.